Is my screen visible? Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, for example, so if you look at this particular diagram, we were discussing in the morning that this is the hierarchy. And if you go for runtime exceptions, these are all the runtime exceptions which are there in our Java library. So for example, we understood null pointer, index out of bound, etc. So similarly, what are checked exceptions? So Java has extended from an exception class. It has created some of the exceptions as checked exceptions. So that means without putting them in a try catch block, my compiler will not compile your code to .class file. So that means, so these are all the exceptions. You must put them in a try catch block. So the purpose is, suppose that particular exception happens, there must be a try catch block in place. Whereas our runtime exceptions are exceptions, those exceptions you need to fix them. For example, if there is a null pointer exception, as a programmer, you are supposed to make sure that you don't refer to the null. So you have to fix that code rather than handling those exceptions. In the case of a checked exception, what will happen? Let's see. So as soon as there is an, suppose I have for example, I've just taken one class called file input stream. This particular file input stream throws file not found exception. So it's a checked exception. If it's a checked exception, that means compiler is checking for that exception whether you have handled it or not. So it is making you compulsory to put a try catch block there. So you are supposed to handle this. Whereas suppose if I'm making int I is equal to 10 divided by 0, now see, it is not showing, it is not checking that exception during the compilation. Okay, there is no syntax error. Whereas if you don't put this, so it will going to show you an exception. So 1 second. So now you can see it is telling you to handle this particular exception. So it will be checked by your compiler. So if it is an exception class extending the exception, then it will be checked exception. If you want a runtime exception, then you should extend this runtime exception clause. So the examples are IO exceptions, class not found exception, socket exception, SQL exception, etc. For example, you're trying to connect to a database. The database server is down. So obviously there should be a try catch block. So similarly, you're trying to read a file. There is an IO exception. That means file does not exist. So you should write a try catch block. So that means we don't know in a runtime if the file does not exist, if the server does not exist, if the socket does not exist. Okay, if the particular class what you're trying to refer does not exist, then they are all checked exceptions. You should handle them. Okay. One of the example is here. So I'm making this particular file. I'm just opening this, trying to open this file for my reading purpose. So you have to put them in a try catch block. If the file does not exist, then it will going to give me this exception. So suppose if I try to run it, of course, on my desktop, this file is not there. So suppose if I write it, sorry, if I try to run it, so you can see, okay, it is running a different file. 1 second. Okay, it is actually running this exception. Okay, so now you can see file not found exception is getting thrown by my JVM. What is the message? This particular file system cannot find the path specified. Okay, this is where it is happening. So these are all the chains of method it is internally calling. These are the library methods which is calling. Okay, guys, we got the clarity. What is checked and what is unchecked? So is that clear? Okay. So if it is checked by the compiler, then we say that it's a checked exception, otherwise unchecked exception. So now let's try to understand quickly, what do you mean by custom exceptions? So this is very important, guys. So all of you, please listen it carefully. So let's say I want to create one exception class of my own, just like how they have created this file not found exception. I want to create one exception class. Okay, all of you say it very carefully. So I will just create one class. So I'm going to call it as, for example, I'm designing an application for my voting system. Okay. So suppose age, I was giving you an example like age limit exception. If a age is below certain years, so then I want to throw the object of that exception, and then I want to handle that particular exception. I want to pass on the information to the end user that what went wrong. Okay. So let me create one exception class called age limit exception. It's a normal class. So I'm going to make it as a checked exception class by extending with my exception class. All of you try to understand this carefully. So this is my hierarchy. I'm just creating one child class by extending this exception. So as soon as I extend it from exception, it will become throwable. So my class custom exception class age limit exception will become throwable. So it is an exception. So it is a relationship now. Age limit exception is an exception. So it is the child of your exception class. So Java has created this. Okay. Now, what I want to do, I want to create one constructor that can pass on the particular message. See, look at this. My standard exception has got a message now. So this particular exception class is having one data member or it is having one ancestor property called as a message. That message I want to initialize. So what do I do? I'm going to simply write one public constructor, or I'll just write one constructor that will take a string message, and that message I would like to pass on to my parent class. One second. So constructor call must be the first statement. Now it is the first statement. One second. See, I don't have to create one data member for string. So this message, I would like to pass it on to my constructor. Yes. So my custom exception class is simply extending my exception class, and I'm writing one constructor. So I can pass my custom message there. So that will get passed on to my parent constructor. For example, if you see this, it is calling exception. So inside exception, if you go and inspect, it will pass to the throwable. In the throwable, it will be having a data member called message. Through get message, we'll be able to access that particular message. So this is the picture about my custom exception class. So now what I want to do. So let me write one driver class. Okay. Let me write one class I'll call it as voting system or voting app. So this is my voting app. Imagine it has got one integer age. So whenever you are constructing this particular voting app object, let's say I will write one constructor to initialize this age. Okay, and then I would like to write one method called vote. All of you please observe carefully. So this is my public function called as vote, or I can also make it as do voting. Let me make it as a verb. So do voting will not going to return anything. So it's going to, it's a void method. So what I'll check, if all of you please observe this, if this dot age is less than 18 years, then what I do something called as throw new, just like how my JVM used to throw the exception object. Now programmatically, as a programmer, if it is not satisfying my business logic, I'm going to throw the exception. Whoever calls do voting, so they will going to get this exception object. They have to handle it. Otherwise, it will go to terminate their program. And also, my exception, what I'm throwing is a checked exception. All of you see, so there is an age limit exception which I created. It's a custom exception which I created. So what is the message I would like to give? So I can give you cannot vote as your age is below 18 years. So this is the object, this is the class. Using this class, I'm passing this constructor message. This particular when I try to build a new object of this particular class, that particular message will going to come here. Using this constructor, it will come here. When it comes, that particular message I'm passing on to the exception class. From the exception class, it will go to the throwable. In throwable, there is one message. So let me make this as message. I do the refactoring. So this is my message. So there is a get message to get this. So in my voting, I'm going to create the object of this using this custom message, and also I want to throw it. So that means whenever whoever calls this, so this method is capable of throwing this particular exception. So where am I supposed to handle this exception which is getting thrown? I should not handle this inside do voting. The one who is calling this do voting should handle it. If your age is less than 18 years, then there is an exception. Otherwise, we will say that just a message, thank you for voting. So either it will be successful or you will get an exception message. So this particular exception message, to throw an exception object, you need to create it. Then only you'll be able to throw it. So because we are not handling it, then we need to mark this particular method as throws my age limit exception. That means do voting. If you call do voting, so this is the incoming parameter you can send, but we don't have any parameter. This is the return parameter. We are not sending any return parameter. And this throws indicates that what is that exception it is capable of throwing. So it is capable of, if your age is less than 18 years, it is capable of throwing this exception. That's what I have marked it using throws keyword. They will ask you, what is throw and what is throws? Throw is used to throw a new custom exception, or it is just used to throw an exception object. What is throws? Throws is a keyword to indicate that this method is capable of throwing this. So whoever calling this method should handle this exception. So now let's save it. So now let's write the driver. Try to understand the various sections. So this is my driver. Public static void string. So inside this, I would like to create the object of my voting app. So let me create the voting app. So let's say it is my election. Election is equal to new voting app. So in this voting app, let's say it can store only one age right now. So let me store it as 17. So what is the age which is stored inside voting app now, right now? Hmm. 17 ही होगा right now. Let me close other files. ये तो custom exception class हो गया. मेरा try. पहले हमें एक्सेप्शन क्लास बनाना है, बाद में हमको वो एक्सेप्शंस को थ्रो करना है जब इट वायलेट्स आवर बिजनेस रिक्वायरमेंट. सो बाद में वी आर ट्राइंग टू कॉल दिस वोटिंग ऐप यूजिंग इलेक्शन. सो इलेक्शन इज अ voting app, so I'm just calling do voting. All of you please observe. So this particular exception is a checked exception because we are extending from our exception clause. So my compiler will say that it's an unhandled exception. Why it is saying telling me this? It is because it is a checked exception. You must write a try catch block for this. So instead of doing a stack trace, so let me print that particular message for us. System.out. I will say e.get message. What is the message we are passing? The message we are passing as per your requirement. You can give me an appropriate message. It should be user friendly. User should be able to understand what are you trying to say. So now let's try to run this. Okay, I think it is running a different 1 second. It was running a different file. So let's run it. You cannot vote as your age. So you can write any custom message there, okay? Right. Below 18 years. So let's say you want to print the age also. Yes, you can do that. So I'll just concatenate your this dot age. So suppose if I run it now, it will tell you that your current age is 17 years. You should be at least 18 years to vote. So generally, my exception clause will be as simple as this. Okay, and I'm going to use these throws keyword to indicate that this particular voting method is capable of, so you can see, look at the signature, all of you please. It throws this exception. Because it's a checked exception, you have to write a try catch block. Otherwise, your compiler itself will tell you you cannot compile it. So it becomes compulsory to write a try catch block. Otherwise, I can also make this main method also throws. So for example, guys, all of you see is, you can also make this main method throws this age limit exception. That means my JVM is calling this. If you forward this exception to JVM, it will simply terminate it. So now let's try to run it. So you can see June 28th, custom exceptions, age limit exception happened. So this is the message, and this is your start trace. In the driver, you called it here. In the voting app, this is where the exception happened. So just like the way Java is handling the exception, we will also be able to handle it in our application. That's why it is called as custom exceptions. Java has allowed us also to write the exceptions or handle the exception in the same way as Java is handling it. Any questions here, guys? Were you able to follow the custom exceptions? Any questions here? No, sir. Okay. Okay. So if it is done, then I would like to move on to the next topic called as collections. Okay. Right. One second, guys. Okay. So just like this particular exceptions, Java has created one more framework. And in that framework, there is a hierarchy called as collections. So let's try to understand what is this collections in our Java. So collections in Java. I just want to understand the hierarchy, then we'll discuss further. So let me just have a look at. Is this image clearly visible, guys?
Yes, sir.
Actually, this is also available from Oracle site. So let me just take it from Oracle itself. I think we can also refer W3 schools or W3 resources. Give me a minute. I hope this particular image is very clear now. So whenever we have a set of elements or we have a multiple elements or multiple objects to be handled. For example, we have an array of integers, array of float, and array of user, employee objects, or array of student objects. So whenever we declare an array and start storing them, when we are declaring it, if we declare a fixed size, because of my program demand, I will not be able to extend it, or I will not be able to expand it. Similarly, whenever I don't need the memory, I'll not be able to reduce the memory allocated. So if you say it is an array of size 100, then it will occupy 100 memory locations. Correct? Huh? So that means it will not dynamic in nature. When there is a additional requirement, you will not be able to allocate a memory for your array. So I want something which can grow automatically and which can also shrink when there is no use. So such a framework is called as collection framework. So there is a disadvantage in an array because the size is fixed there. So we go for a collection framework, and let's try to understand the hierarchy of collection framework, and then we'll try to understand how to use it. So first of all, in this particular framework, we have some interfaces, and also we have some fully concrete classes or implementation of those interfaces. All of you please observe here. At the top, we have something called as a collection interface. So this is the parent interface. So under that, we have three siblings. One is set, list, and a queue. So set is an interface, extends collection. Set is a collection. List extends collection, is a collection. Queue also extends collection, and also it is a collection. See, suppose whenever you want a dynamically sized array, you need to go for a list. You can look at the center here. So this is what we're going to use when we have to store our elements just like an array, and we want, whenever you want to index them to access those elements. So, and also you'll be able to, whenever you for example, in a given list, whenever you insert your data, it will go to retain the order of your data. What are all the features of this list? So let's say that it will going to maintain the order, whatever order in which you're going to insert, in the same order it will going to retrieve the data. So for example, in a given array, so according to the index, whatever data you insert, the same data will be there in the given list. So, and also it will not be sorted, and also it does not, or it contains duplicate elements. So these are all the features of my list. So whenever you go for an asynchronous way of accessing the data, then you need to go for vectors. So what do you mean by asynchronous? Asynchronous means simultaneously two threads in my same application will be trying to access my data. So then you need a synchronous mechanism to handle that particular request. So that thing, if you're writing a multi-threaded programming, you need to create a vector, or you need to use a concrete class vector to create your list. Okay. Similarly, whenever you don't want synchronous data, you don't want to access the data in an asynchronous way, then you need to go for array list. So simply, list is nothing but your array. Only thing is, it will go dynamic in size. So similarly, guys, there is a set. What do you mean by a set, guys? What is the feature of set?
Remove duplicate data.
Excellent. So in a set, we'll not have any duplicates. So that is the purpose of this set interface. So set interface का reference variable create करेंगे. Right hand side में we can create the object of that particular interface, set interface, using any of these things. So we can go for hash set. So usually hash set will have a unique elements, okay, but it will not going to give you the order. In what order you going to insert, it will not going to retrieve in the same order. Let's say I've inserted 1, 2, 3. Then when you retrieve it, it might be 3, 4, 2. Sorry, 1, 2, 3. Then it might be 2, 3, 1. So order will not be there, and also it won't sort automatically. If you want the order, please look at the keywords here. If it is linked is nothing but my linked list. So it will going to have a link between the first element, second element, third element, etc. If you want that feature, then you need to go for linked hash set. So similarly, you want your unique elements to be sorted, then you need to go for tree set. And you can observe that tree set implements your sorted set. Sorted set extends your set. Set extends collection. So this is the hierarchy. So similarly, guys, so we have one more interface called as a queue. Queue, we all know. Though one analogy is, so it is a analogy is a movie ticket queue. So whoever goes first, they will get the first ticket. Right? So this data structure is also called as first in, first out. So we need to understand how whenever we add an element, so we will enqueue, and whenever we want to remove an element from this queue, we're going to dequeue it. So there are predefined methods in this queue that has been implemented in the concrete classes. So the concrete classes are, if you want to implement a queue, then you can create an object of linked list. Otherwise, we also have a priority queue. So in my priority queue, suppose, for example, there is a first object or first element which I'm going to insert into the queue, which is having a lesser priority. The second element which I insert is having a higher priority. Then what will happen? Automatically, my queue will go to prioritize the elements, and when you dequeue it, the lesser priority element will go back, and the higher priority element will come to the front, and it will get dequeued. Usually, this queue is used for delivering a service. For example, movie ticket counter, or there is a CPU, and the CPU wants to schedule the task. So during those time, this queue data structure will be, or this queue collection can be used. So this is the overview of my collection framework. In the same framework, we also have something called as hash map. One second, guys. So let me just open this. So in this framework, there is a collection of interfaces and collection of classes. So the previously we saw collection interface and its hierarchy. So similarly, there is one more interface called as a map. So this map is used to store my key and a value pair. So my key is used to find the hash value, and then we'll be able to find the data associated with that particular key. So in the sense, I want to store something like a dictionary. There is a keyword and there is a meaning. So whenever you want to establish that sort of data to be stored, then we can go for map interface. So in the map, once again, we have something called as a hash map. If it is not, if you are accessing the data in a unsynchronized way, if you want it in a synchronized way, that means in a multi-threaded programming, if you want to use, then you need to go for hash table. Similarly, your hash map does not contain the order. If you want the order, you need to go for linked hash map. Similarly, whenever you want your map elements to be sorted automatically, then you need to go for tree map. So then finally, guys, we also have some built-in utility classes called as collections and arrays. So just to give me a second. All of you please observe here. Java has also created from this particular root class called object. It has also created one utility class called arrays and a utility class called as collections. Using these, I will be able to process my data in my collections. And what is the advantage of this particular collection? You can see here, my set, my list, and my queue, all of them will going to have a same methods from my collections. So that means I will be able to convert my list into set and set into queue. So my data will be, I will be able to convert from one data type to another data type, or from one collection to another collection type, because they all have a same parent called collection. So, and also if you learn the collection methods once, so then it will be the same for all your set, list, and a queue. They all will be common because they all are extending collection framework. So it will going to simplify my learning. How will I find an element? How will I delete an element? How will I insert a new element? Everything will be common for all my collections. So now let's take up an example and then we'll try to understand one by one. Any questions here, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. So your assignment is to do a self-study on how this particular collection framework will automatically expand and how it will go to automatically stream. So what is the default size of my collection? So how it internally works. So that will be your assignment. So you guys can Google it and try to understand. So now let's try to implement this particular list. So please observe here, I can create the reference variable of my list and I can create a object of this array list. Okay. Meanwhile, let's go to Google and get the methods in my list. So let me also get it from Oracle website. So this is my Java 8 documentation. It is talking about my interface called a list. So in this list, these are all the methods. So I have an add method that appends a specified element to the end of the list. Similarly, I have an add, I specify the index and the element. So it will go to overwrite that particular element to the specified index. Okay. So now one by one, let's try to experiment. So before that, let me give you the link. So it's very simple to Google, guys. So you just give the name of your interface or your class that you want to see. You just say methods, and you can also specify the version of Java, Oracle, Java version 8. You will get that documentation. So you can search for all these things. All the interfaces you can search. Am I clear? So now let's go and write one simple example to understand it. So I have created one. I think I did not create any package. So let's create one package. Let me call this package as June 28 collections. So I want to create one driver class. So now let's try to create one reference variable of list. Okay. So this particular reference variable or interface list is generic. So I can create a list of a specific data type. Okay. So that generic data type we specify it in a angle bracket like this. What is the list data type? So the list data type, let's say I want to store integer values. I'll call it an int list. So that is equal to new. So obviously, if you look into this particular structure, so using which concrete class I can create the object guys now. So only the bottom thing, if you look into this hierarchy, only the bottom things are the
Array
concrete
list.
classes. Yes, very good. So we need to create the object of our array list. So what we do, create object of array list. So of course it is asking me, my compiler is asking me to import it. For example, here you can see. So the list, I want to import it from a utility package. You can see java.util. It is a package in which they have created this particular list interface. So similarly, ARR, AY. Similarly, I would like to import this array list from my Java util package. So this is my reference variable of type integer. So, and it is pointing to an object of array list. So how do I add an element? So we just saw in the documentation. So into this into list, I will be able to add an element like 5. So add is a method to append my element. So similarly, I can keep on appending. So all of you please look at the order. So I'm just adding some random numbers here. And if I try to print them out, so inside this particular list, there is a toString method. So inside this particular class definition, there is a toString method that will going to give me the string format of my data. Suppose let me run it. All of you please observe here. So this is the order in which I inserted, and I'm getting the elements in the same order 5, 3, 2. Okay, and also, so I can say that what is the features of list. So the features of list is number 1, it will maintain the order. Okay, it will be in order. Maintains order. 1 second. Yeah, sorry guys. So it will maintain the order. In what order you want to insert, the same order it will going to give you the result. For example, if I cut this and put it in the beginning, so the first element which I'm adding is 2. So now let's run it. You can see it is maintaining the same order. Okay, what is the second feature? The second feature is it won't sort your data. Okay, it won't sort. So no, we'll call it as it is not sorted. So what is the third feature? Or what is that? How it behaves? For example, if I add one more element here, you can see 2 and 2 are duplicates. You can see it allows duplicates. Okay, it allows duplicates. So it will maintain the order, but it will not sort, and also it allows a duplicate values in a given list. So these are all the features. So let's say whenever you are adding, it will always go to append. That means you can see if I add one more element, let's say 1, so it will simply go and insert at the end of this particular value. So that's why we say that it will go to append. So see, 1 got appended at the end. So similarly, I can also go for one more overloaded method, int list dot add. I can also specify the index. You can see I can specify the index and the element where you want to put it. Let's say I want to modify this second element. So the index is, what is the index of 5? Guys, what is the index of 5?
1.
1.
1 ना? So 1 की जगह पे मैं डालना चाहता हूँ 50. In index 1, whatever may be the value, I want to update that. I don't want to add a new element at the end. Okay, I want to replace this. So this I can do for updating. This is for appending. So after updating, I did not print now. So चलो print करते हैं. All of you please see. If I remove this one index, so then अपने आप last में add हो जाएगा. You want to do this? Don't pass the index. If you pass the index, so it will go and replace it or override that particular index. So sorry. So this one, sorry, it is not updating. It is, you can say that it is inserting. Yeah. So what exactly it is doing? It is inserting to this index this particular value. You can see all other elements got shifted to right side. So this was your right elements and this was your left elements. So in between that, it has got inserted. So all my elements got shifted by one place to the right.
What will be the default size of this list?
Yeah, that I want all of you to do the self study. Explore करो, बाद में discuss करेंगे. Yes, can I get a response? Can you do that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Right. So similarly, guys, so I'll come back to this add-all later. So similarly, I have a clear method. So clear करते ही sub elements को ये remove कर देगा. So similarly, I can also go for contains. So what this contains will do, it will check whether it has got an element or not. Okay. So returns true. Look at the return value. returns true if this list contains the specified element or not. Okay, so similarly contains all, I can send one collection as a parameter. It will going to return me true if my current collection contains all these parameter elements. So similarly add all I have. So I can pass one collection and I can add these parameter collection to my collection. So similarly add all at index and a collection. I'll be able to add collection B to collection A starting from this given index. Similarly, guys, equals is a method that will going to compare the specified object with this list for equality. So similarly, whenever you want to retrieve an element from a given index, you can go for get method. So similarly, hash code will always give me an integer value that will be unique for that particular object. So I can also get this method is coming from my object class. So basically it gives me the hash code of the list because you are calling this method on the object of the list. So similarly, if you have the object, so I can also find out the index by calling index of method. So it will going to get me the index of the first occurrence. If it is not found, it will going to give you -1. Similarly, guys, I have a method called isEmpty. So like these, you guys have to do a thorough study of all these methods because you want to use them in your application. So I can check whether the list contains no elements or not. Okay. We'll talk about the iterator later. So similarly, if you want to search my elements from right to left, then I need to go for last index of method. Index of will going to search from left to right, whereas this one will going to search from right to left. So similarly, guys, I have a remove method. You know the index, so I can get the index using index of. So using that, if you want to remove it, you can also remove it. So if you remove an element, automatically my right side elements will get moved by one place to the left. So insert करते ही right side पे shift हो जाएगा, remove करते ही left side पे वो left side shift हो जाएगा. If you know the index, you can give. Otherwise, I have one more overloaded method which can take object as a reference. So if it successfully removes, then you will get a Boolean value. So similarly, we have a remove all. So you pass a collection as a parameter. All these collection elements will be removed from the calling collection. Collection A dot remove all collection B. जो भी elements B में दिखेगा वो सब सारे चीज A में भी remove कर देगा. So retain all. It is the opposite of my remove all. So whatever you find in a collection B will be retained. Other elements will be get dropped from your collection A. Guys, so suppose this particular method is a contrast for your add method. So whenever you want to update, you are supposed to use this set method. Okay, set will going to do the replacing. So let's go and use this set method. So I want to do the update. So this is my linked list dot set. So where you want to set, what do you want to set? So I want to set the element 1 to, let's say 55. Okay, I want to print it. Let's try to run it. All of you please understand this. So when I did add to a particular index, so it inserted this and all my elements got shifted by one place. So when I do set, so I'm just replacing my current element with a new element. So that is the purpose of your set. Make a habit of reading these Java documentation. So similarly, guys, I can also get to know the size of my list. Okay. So similarly, so we'll talk about the sort later. So this is one of the important method, guys, to array. So array can be converted into a list. Similarly, list elements can also be converted into an array. Okay. Suppose I'm working with the array, and all of a sudden I feel that I want to expand my memory. So that cannot be possible in arrays because array is a fixed size. I want to dynamically grow my size. So current array elements I want to move to my list. So then there should be a method to convert that particular array to my list. Similarly, whenever you want to convert them back to the array, then you can go for your list dot array to array method that will give you your elements in a in an array format. So these are all the methods that we need to quickly go through. So similarly, guys, so let's try to experiment with int list dot remove. So you can see here, remove has got, I can also pass the primitive index, or else I can also pass the object reference. Okay. So now let's try to remove based on my index. So I need to give a primitive value, let's say. So suppose I want to remove the index 2. So after removing it, so let me try to execute it. So whether it will going to take it as an object or whether it will going to take it as a primitive. So this particular remove has got two things. And also please observe here what it does. It also has a throws. So these are all the possible exceptions it can throw. It can throw unsupported operations exception if the remove operation is not supported by this list. Otherwise, index out of bound exception if your index is out of range. Okay, so if it is less than 0 or if it is greater than the size, then it will going to throw you this index out of bound exception here as well. So what it will going to return? What is the parameter? Index, the index of the element to be removed. What it returns? The element previously at the specified position it will return. So observe here, remove method will give you an integer value. So the current value in that particular index will be returned. So now let's try to run it. So now you can see at index 2, it has removed my element. So similarly, guys, let's say I want to remove the object 2. Correct now? So now I need to create integer value is equal to 2. So now I'll go for int list dot remove. Here I would like to pass the value. Please observe here. So this is my int literal and this is my int wrapper object. So after doing this, so let's print the value and check it. Okay, I think it did not take that particular object. One second. I want to remove the value to 1 second. Yeah, sorry. You can observe here, it has removed my first two. Sorry, I was looking at this later part. So you can observe it is trying to remove this particular value. So it is removing my first occurrence. That's what you need to understand. So similarly, get. So if you know the index, so I'll be able to get the element. So let's say
So
system
can you
dot.
just
Sorry.
so can you just repeat remove method? Like in under the remove, we have to give the index or the value
It's up
of
to you.
element.
If you want to give the index, you give the primitive value. If you give a primitive value, it will think that it is an index. So similarly, if you give a val object, sorry, if you give an object, so then it will think that you want to remove that object. You want it to search the element and remove it. So the question is when it will consider it as an object and when it will consider it as a literal. So this is an integer literal, whereas this is an object of my integer wrapper. ये तो object हो गया ना, ये तो primitive हो गया. So
Yes.
if you're getting confused, I can also do like this: int index is equal to 2. So I was also trying to experiment one more thing. So that is called as get. So let me do this. So I want to get the element. So this is the current list. So from the current list, I want to get the element from the index 0. So in index 0, right now, it is 55. ये clear हो गया ना? So this is your index. This is your wrapper class. This is your primitive. So that's how your method is working. If it is primitive, it will remove that element from the given index. It's again a overloaded method. Remove is a overloaded method having primitive data type. So, and also it has got a remove with the object. If it is of object of any wrapper class, then it will think it as it is a value that you want to remove. Clear, guys?
It will delete the first occurrence of tree.
Yes, it will. Yes, exactly. If you go to remove the first occurrence of the element. Yes, you are right. So similarly, I can also find the index of. So index of 3. I go for my int list dot. I have an index of. I will specify the. I need to specify the suppose. So here also I need to give it as an object. So, okay. So index of 2. So I'm passing this 2. So index of 2. So let's try to find out my index of 2 is 2. You can see this is my 0, this is 1, this is 2. Index of 2 is 2. So like this, I want all of you to experiment with these methods. So E is empty. So like this, you guys can quickly experiment. So E is empty will going to give you Boolean. Returns true if this list contains no elements. So you can see this list is list empty, it is false because it has contained some elements. So I'm also, let's try to create the size of my current list. So we need to call the methods appropriately. You can see it is telling me that there are 4 elements. 1 second, please. I'm getting a call. Yes. That's all, guys. What I want from you, yours end is I want all of you to experiment these list with the different data types. So obviously, as I have created this list of integers, I'll also be able to create list of any other data type. So for example, I will create a list of my double. So I'll call it as double list is equal to new array list of so here to my double list, I will be able to add my double values. So for example, 1.5. Okay, so similarly, whatever is the data type of your list, that data type I'll be able to insert. So for example, 6.5. Example 2.5. So I want to print them. So this is my double list. The same operations what we discussed with respect to integer can also be done with my double values. So let's say I want to create a list of string values. List to specify the data type. So I'll say this as list of my names or name list. So look at the way we create the variable reference variable names. So this will be equal to array list. So here to my name list, I will be able to add the string values. So let's say there is a person BB. Okay, it has taken double quotes there. So that's why it was giving me an error. So let me give it as DD. Let me give CC. Let me try to print them. System.out my name list. So if I run it, you can see I'll be able to get a list of my names. Okay, guys, all primitive data. This is how I'm going to create a list of all my wrapper class. Similarly, if you want a primitive also, of course you can do it. Only thing is you should know how to handle or how you are supposed to do that. So here primitive data type डाल देंगे. So this one will be my int list. So I think 1 second, guys. Okay, sorry. So what is happening? This because it's a primitive data type now, so it is not able to get the size, or it does not have any details about how much is the space required to store my data. So I'm not able to create this. So it is giving me this particular error. Insert dimensions to complete the reference time. So I'm not able to create this in this particular fashion. Okay, I'll talk about these later. So let's talk about the list of our user defined data types. Let's say I want to create the list of students or list of employees. We already created many classes of student and an employee. Let's create a list of my employees. So employee class is there in 27th array package. So let's refer it. I'll call it as EMP list. is equal to new array list. So the way I've handled my primitive or sorry, my wrapper objects. So similarly, I'll be able to add my user defined objects. So how will I add it? So this is my employee list. I will say add. So here I will be able to add a new employee object. So I'll give an ID. I'll give a name. So let it be some FF. This is my salary is some 100 rupees or some 1,000 rupees. So let me add them in a random order. Let the ID be 3, let the ID be 2. So here, let it be AA. So let it be something. So let me make this as 3,000. Let me make this as 2,000. Or I can also give some random values. So I'm giving these random values so that based on any of the attributes, I want to sort it later. Okay. So right now, let's try to print them. So for example, sys.out, I would like to print this EMP list. All of you observe. So I've added my employee 1, then 3, and then 2. Look at the order, please. Is it correct? Is it in the same order, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So similarly, we will not be able to do the, for example, you will not be able to find or remove an object using the index here, or you will not be able to remove an object or employee object by specifying a reference of an employee. So to do that, we need to override 2 more methods in my employee class so that my framework can identify what do you mean by equalness. Because if whenever you want to find the index, so you want to enable my framework to find the equal objects. Right now, suppose you're looking for an employee object with ID 1, then how am I or how my framework is supposed to find whether this particular ID 1 exists in my list or not? So to check that equalness, we need to override 2 methods in my employee class. So one is a hash code method and one is a equals method. So using these 2 methods, my framework will make sure or it will go to check for equality. So when it comes to wrapper classes, so inside wrapper classes, it knows how to compare the values of the same objects. So here, because it is user defined data type, how will you say that 2 employee objects are equal? We generally say 2 objects of my employee are equal if their IDs are same. Correct now? So I might have 2 objects of employees stored at different locations, but they might have the same data. Correct now? Instead of checking all the data, what I can do, if the IDs are same, then I will say both the records are of same employee. Correct now? How do you check? How do you check the equality of 2 objects of employee? You will all have a unique ID now. So I should be able to check the equalness of the objects based on your ID. So that's what I'm supposed to do it inside my object class or inside my class called employee. Guys, are you able to follow? So let me copy this particular employee class from a given package so that I can make some modification, guys. So I need to go to this 27th array. So I want to copy this. Guys, are you following it? Hello, guys. I'm asking you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the class which I want to refer. So what do? I'll simply remove this import statement. So I want to refer it from my own package. So what is my problem now? My problem is I want to remove a particular object. If you're giving a reference of one employee, then it has to find that employee and it has to remove it. So how it will get to know whether two objects are equal or not? So to do that, I have to override two methods. So whenever there is a question of equality, all of you please observe here. So go to that particular class. So whenever you want to compare two objects of employee, then what you need to do? So you have to override, go to the source, and you need to go for override or implement methods. So here I want to override two methods. One is called as the hash code method. Sorry, one is called equals method and one other one is called as hash code method. Okay, so now 1 second. Yeah, sorry guys. So instead of this, I can also go for this specific option is there, generate hash code and equals method. If you click this, it will ask you so based on what you would like to create the equal method. So I don't want to check for the salary. I don't want to check for the name. If IDs are same, I'll simply say that they are equal. Okay, I don't want to waste the time in comparing them. So now let me generate it. All of you try to understand. So this is an hash code that will going to return me the unique value for my object. Okay, so suppose you send me two objects to compare. So what do? I'll take the ID and I'll find the hash code of it. If both the ID hash code is same, suppose for example both the IDs are same, then my hash code will also be same. So similarly, I have a equals method. So my object A will going to call the equals method by passing object 2 as a parameter. So we are checking object A dot equals to object B. If my current reference of the object, that is A, is equal to the parameter object, this is B, then I will say that they are both equal. That means my equals method will going to return true, they are equal. If my object, what you're sending is null, then I'm going to return false. So and also I'll try to get the class, and if it is not equal, both the classes are not equal, then I'll return false. Get class will tell you the class using which you created the object. So finally guys, so basically I want to check the equality of my IDs. So because this is coming as an object, you downcast it to employee, and I will check the equalness of my current object ID with the parameter ID. So this is the other employee. This is the current employee. So object dot equals method will going to check the equality of this particular ID. So similarly, object dot hash will going to give you the object hash code of this particular ID. So these are all my objects. This is a class, consists of some static utility methods. So object is a utility class. It has got static methods. So that's why I don't have to create the object of these objects. or instance of this object. Without that, I will be able to call all these static methods. So now I've introduced two methods, overridden hash code and equals method. Now my framework will be able to compare two elements of the objects, two employee objects based on their ID. So now let's go to the driver. So now let me create one more object of my employee. Employee emp, otherwise I'll make it as find emp, find employee is equal to so I want to find this employee. So let's say this ID is 5 and I'll call this as II. Let his salary be 5,000. So I want to find whether this employee is there in my list or not. So find emp with ID equal to 5. I will go for my employee list dot index of my find emp. So what this index of will do, it should give me the index of the first occurrence of the specified element. Otherwise, it should give me -1. Okay, let's try to run it. All of you, please see here. It is telling me -1. What is the meaning of this, guys?
Not available.
Not available. So it simply compared this ID. So none of my list elements contains ID 5. So it is telling me it is not there. So now let me add this and then find it. Let me go for emp list dot add. So I've added him. So now let me go for the check. All of you please see here. It is telling me that it is found at an index 3. So this is my index 0, 1, 2, and this is where I added this at index 3. So it is telling me that it has found in the index 3. So similarly, guys, I can also remove now. So go for emp list dot remove. So remove, you can also remove by index, and also I can give the employee to be removed. Okay, so let me create an object of the employee and try to remove it. Let's say I want to remove this guy. I'm creating a different new object of my employee too. I'll call this as delete emp. I'll call this as delete emp. And after deleting it, let's print my list. So like this, I want all of you to experiment. So after deleting the ID2, let's find it out. ID1 is there, ID3 is there, ID5 is also there. So you can see ID2 got removed.
Can we give their index value also?
Yes. So at index 1, which is the element we have? So sorry, index 1 is ID 3, correct? No? So this is index 0. So this is at index 1. So let's remove this one element. Clear now, guys? So in your index 1, this was the element. This is your array. So in this employees array, this is your index 0. This is index 1. This is your index 2. So you removed the element at index 1. So employee 3 is not there. This is your effective array or effective list. Any questions? Clear हो रहा है? समझ में आ रहा है?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So like this, you need to summarize the concept, guys. Okay. So what will happen with my wrapper? So how will I handle my user-defined data type? So for example, I showed you the example of how I create a list of employees. So similarly, you guys should think about how you guys can create a list of any other thing, any other sort. And basically, you guys need to find a way to do these CRUD operations. So we call it as a create, read, update, and delete. How will you create, guys? Tell me. By going for add method, correct now? C stands for create. R stands for read. U stands for update. D stands for delete. Now, can you find out how do you create? By adding it. How do you read? By getting it, correct now? So I will say system.out. Then I will say emp list dot get. So you specify the index, आपको मिल जाएगा. So index at 1, what is there at index 1? Let's print. At index 1, this is my index 0, and this is my index 1. So in index 1, you have an ID 5. So it is printing that this is the object at index 1. Okay. So similarly, I want to update it. How do you update, guys, by the way? If I add, it will going to append it, correct now? So you want to update it. So what is the method? Set. Simple. So index bol do, and what is the replacing object you want to put? You put it. The similar way how you handle the other data type, you also handle your user defined data type. इसको आपको समझना है बस. So let's say first employee is this ID 1 ना. ये delete employee को replace कर लेंगे. So what is our delete employee? Delete employee is 2, guys. So with AA, I want to replace with this particular object. This is not basically updating it, and basically we are replacing it. So now let's run it. So all of you please observe here, a particular del object is getting replaced in this particular index. Previously FF ID 1 tha. So I am setting it to a new object to that place. Clear, guys? Any questions here? Guys, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So just like how we handled our list, guys, so similarly, we can also handle with respect to, for example, our set, because both my set and list are extending my collections. Okay, so set को भी हम add कर सकते हैं, we can also update कर सकते हैं, delete कर सकते हैं using the similar method as my list. So whenever you want to create the object of a set, so we have to use a different class, that is hash set. So when we create the object of a set using a hash set, अपने आप duplicate elements remove हो जाएगा. So let's just quickly handle this set. So if you want to take a break, all of you can take a break and come back. Otherwise, we can continue with this set. However you feel comfortable, you can do that. What can we do, guys? Can you take a small break and come back? You must be asking, sir, it's already 5, or you're asking to come back. We
Yes,
started
sir.
late now. We asked it, say we started late. I think Nikhil asked, Nikhil told me that, so our timing will be from 11:30. So we'll count it from tomorrow then, huh?
Yes, sure, sure, sir.
Oh, okay. No
Yes.
issues, no issues. Okay, guys, no problem. So all of you please go through this example and also similarity check karo. So what are all the things we can do with this particular set, particular list. Clear now?
Yes.
So आज बहुत सारे topics cover हो guys. So you can go through these exceptions, you can go through custom exceptions, you can also go through this particular collections. Okay, collection के बारे में पढ़ो, and let's discuss about it tomorrow. How it can grow automatically, how what is the default size? किसी ने पूछ रहा था ना? So it will be nice you guys explore about it. How it can automatically do it. So somebody would have written those logic to automatically expand, इसलिए वो expand हो रहा है. So how exactly it will expand? What is the minimum size? So अपने आप कैसे बढ़ेगा? In how much fold it will double its size? So all those things are simple, but yet you should have a curiosity, ना? कुछ थोड़ा एक्सप्लोर करो, देखेंगे कब. Okay, guys. Any other questions for me before we end the session? सबको समझ में आ रहा है what we're discussing today? Is the phase right for you guys? Yes, it can store in all elements, Gopal. Yes. Huh, sorry. Can I stop it, guys, here?